What's wrong with Pete Alonso? What should we do with Bryce Elder and Bryce Miller? Join us today where we provide you with the best players to trade for and away on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Sports Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino, and guess what, guys? I have made a Twitter account. It is Dom Martino FB. And Matt's Twitter is Matthew_Ane. A big hello from both of us to you, our everydayers and new listeners. As always, you can find us on all social media platforms and podcasting apps. If you're listening on one like Apple or Spotify, please leave us a 5-star rating and review if you like what you hear. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the little bell below. Subscribe to the channel. Also gives you a notification every time we drop a new episode. Lastly, most importantly, subscribe to us on Subtext. It's a one-on-one in-depth personalized experience. You get call-ups, prospect alerts, injury updates, and much, much more than you can get in our 30-minute podcast. So please sign up for our Subtext today. Today's episode is brought to you by the Gametime app. Download Gametime, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets and the lowest price is always guaranteed. Locked On Fantasy Baseball fans, as always, we have a fully loaded episode for you today. Let us be your team secret weapon as we provide you with the best players to trade for and away this week. Matt, who do we got up first, brother?
All right, we got Mr. Pete Alonso. You know what? Mr. Pistol Pete, Mr. Polar Bear, Mr. I'm not playing so hot with a 141 average over the last month. Here's the thing. We all know this isn't him. He's just having a little down ski part of the year right now, which happens to every baseball player. Now, we all know this may explode, but quite honestly, I think it's worth shooting a shot. I don't know how successful you're going to be in terms of being able to acquire Pete Alonso, but at the same time, he's somebody you should be trying to acquire if you can, right? You're going to have to give up a couple of key cogs in your lineup, but I don't feel it's going to have to be the super elite that you would have had to give up if he was still, rocking and rolling on that big home run pace, which should return. So right now there's a small buy low window where it's like, instead of it 50% off, it's more of like, you got a 15% discount that I feel maybe that 15% is kind of what it would take for me to want to go out there and acquire Pete Alonso. Because quite honestly, I mean, with him already having 26 home runs on the season, of course, we expected him to slow down just a tad. But it looks like he might be trying to turn around and come after Aaron Judge's record for most home runs in the recent times. So, let's see where Pete Alonso can do in this second half, and let's go out there and try and acquire him for 15% off.
Yeah, Matt, I'm right there with you. I think maybe you get a little bit more than 15% off, to be honest with you. He's been putrid. He's been absolutely putrid since, he went down with the injury, and he's really come back and done a little to nothing. As Matt, you mentioned, the home runs are great, the RBIs are great, but he's down at that 207 batting average on the season, and I think a lot of owners are starting to get tired of it, especially in a redraft league. I think you can go out there and you could, if you throw in a guy that has a little bit of power, maybe like a Josh Naylor type, which, maybe he's one of these pitchers we have coming up, and there's some good batters that we have coming up later in the episode, so stay locked on for that. I think you can get Pete Alonso cheap, but he has a big run coming. I guarantee it. He's a career 253 hitter. And honestly, outside of the 2020 shortened season, which I don't really account for I don't really count it for anybody. I don't think you should either. But he's the lowest batting average he had in his career besides that year is 260. And that was his rookie year. Last year he had 271. In 2021, Alonso at 262. So I think he gears a lot closer to that for at least the second half. So he might end up with like a 240 average on the year. But there's a lot of power coming from Alonso. I wouldn't be surprised if he finished with 40 home runs and, over 100 RBIs. And he just looks a lot more like his usual self. When we get to the fantasy baseball playoffs, that's when you're going to need him the most, when he's performing. The whole point of this episode is to, sell high, buy low. And that's what you're going to do here on Pete Alonso. You're going to buy low. So let's move on to this next guy, though. And this is another guy that's just kind of really cooled off since, a hot start, and that's Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan was absolutely dominating through the first couple of months, and through his last few starts here, he's looked really bad. His last 4 starts, going back to looks like June 27th, he gave up 6 runs against Atlanta. He looked a little better in his next one after that against the Royals, but everyone's pitching good against the Royals. Then he went out against Baltimore. He gave up 5 runs, and in his most recent start on the 16th of July, he gave up 3 runs. He had 3 walks, 5 hits, in 5 innings against Oakland, and Oakland's not a great team. So Joe Ryan looks like he has slowed down a little bit here after that hot start. But you know what? I think he's going to pick it back up sooner than later. Joe Ryan's got great stuff. He's not really known for an elite fastball, but what he is known for is the breaking stuff, and he has very, very good pinpoint control. Control isn't really something that, you really lose over time unless you get a case of the yips, and I don't think that's the case with Joe Ryan. He has a 3.77 ERA. His FIP, fielding independent pitching, and ERA indicator is at 3.59. So I think he's going to level out closer to that mid to low 3s ERA with over a K per 9. And as I mentioned, his control is very good. That 103 whip is real. So I think you can get Joe Ryan a little bit, a little bit low right now because of the recent struggles. So if you can go out there and make that trade for Joe Ryan, I think you get that deal done,
Yeah, absolutely. Dom, great take. Joe Ryan is definitely a must-go acquire. You might even be able to get him on the cheaper than normal because now they're probably thinking of the other shoes about to drop, and I had the first half breakout. And that's what you tell them to. But anyway, great take, Dom. Let's move on. Let's talk about Mr. Julio Urias. You know what? Since coming back from the injury, he actually had 2 really good starts. Just his first outing was a little sad. Unfortunately, Kansas City, knocked him around a bit. He put up like a 15 ERA. It only had 2 strikeouts and a 2.67 whip. Only through 3 innings, though. I mean, like, it is what it is. But then he came out against Pittsburgh and the Mets and, went 6 innings deep in both, got 8 and 7 Ks. Didn't give up a run against the Mets, which is, pretty good. So, quite honestly, I have all confidence in Julio Urias. I don't know who's going to be willing to move him, though. Pitching is pretty scarce. It's the same thing with Joe Ryan, but there's a difference between Joe Ryan and Urias is the fact that Joe Ryan is a breakout, whereas like he doesn't have the track record like Urias does. And it's been, quite a couple. Am I saying his name wrong? Is that why you're laughing?
A little bit. I figured, I remember on one episode, you're like, I'm just sticking with Urias. It's Urias.
Is it Urias? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fugly.
It's
Okay.
Nah, I know.
Urias. I like the Urias. I think that's the nickname. It's the
That's
Urias.
what I thought you were staying with.
Yeah.
I thought you were just rolling with it, so I was just gonna let you keep doing your thing.
I don't want to disrespect the guy and go Uranus. So, if he was playing bad, then he's playing like Uranus. But anyway. But anyway, let me go back to Urias. Urias is what do you call it? It's just been solid. The last, I don't know what now, 5 years since he's really gotten the leash taken off. He's just been absolutely monstrous. And quite honestly, he's one of my favorite pitchers in all the league. He's not like a K per 9 guy. He's not going to be like this, 200 inning guy where he's going to have, 250 strikeouts. He's going to be under it, but the ERA is always going to be either right at 3 or sub 3 ERA. Really low whip, usually a sub 1. Like, this kid is consistent. I love Urias. And, quite honestly, I think you should go and try to acquire him and just say, throw out like a half decent offer. You don't really need to go too crazy. Maybe like 1 or 2 of these guys from later in the episode. But you might have to throw in like somebody that would provide a little enticement, like a Yu Darvish or something like that, where, maybe he could bounce back, throw in that big name, but honestly, you're trying to move on from and go out and pick up Julio Urias and call it a day.
Yeah, so before I jump in and give my take on Julio Urias, and we got a Philly starting pitcher. Matt's got the Phillies gear on. We got a couple of Bryces we teased at the top of the episode, and just some other guys that, hey, maybe you should sell high on. I need to talk to you guys about one of our sponsors, Gametime. Have you ever tried to buy tickets to see your favorite artist or sports team and wound up being stressed out by how much of a hassle it can be? Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. That's why you need to check out the Gametime app. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, and comedy and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Using the Gametime app is super rewarding with flash deals on last-minute tickets, easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area, images and views from the seats you'll be sitting in, lowest price guarantee, and event cancellation protection. I mean, there's a reason it's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets and the lowest prices always guaranteed. And guys, dear everydayers and new listeners, we have an incredible opportunity for you to support the show and enjoy some fantastic perks along the way. We're introducing our Diamond Club on the Subtext website. By becoming a member, you not only contribute to the show's success, but also gain access to exclusive benefits. Get your hands on waiver wire rankings, call-up alerts, injury updates, and instant reactions on everything fantasy baseball while enjoying direct access to us with all of your burning fantasy baseball questions. Plus, you can try it out completely free for 14 days. Your support means the world to Matt and I, and we can't wait to connect with you on this exciting journey. Join us on the Diamond Club on Subtext today. Let us take your fantasy baseball experience to new heights. And you can find a link to join us on Subtext in all of our social media bios or wherever you're listening or watching this podcast right now. All right, guys, let's hop back into this thing and let's talk about Julio Urias, right? That's who we're talking about here. And I think that Urias is, a great buy low. As Matt, mentioned a little bit earlier, the guy has been so consistent over the last 5 years, right? Just been a sub 3 ERA, 3 of those years, a little tiny bit over 3 ERA in one of those years. That was a short in 2020. So we know who Julio Urias is at this point in his career. 26 years old. He's shown us a lot. He has a career 2.98 ERA, 670 innings, 663 strikeouts, and a 109 WHIP. So, you're really getting a deal here right now because that ERA is still elevated. He was dealing with that hamstring injury earlier in the year. I think he was battling through it at the beginning of the season, and then finally in May, the Dodgers were like, all right, let's get rid of him here and let's let him get healthy. And as Matt mentioned, those last 2 starts have been fantastic for Julio. I think this is really the last of the buy low window here right now. So you go out there and you get him while you can because I think Urias takes off here in the second half and he becomes that top 15 pitcher we all know and love. So let's keep things pushing here, though. Let's move on to our next guy. And you know what? I got to give Matt a little bit of credit here because he kind of called this one with Xander Bogaerts. He kind of was like, I'm not really feeling it. He, went by our rule. First year on a new team really doesn't always pan out the way you think it should because you're adjusting not only baseball, but you're adjusting your whole life and family and all that fun stuff. But I still think there's upside here with Bogaerts in that lineup. Bogaerts over his career 290 hitter. He's hitting 258 so far this year. He does already have 11 home runs. He had 15 last year on the year in 150 games, so the homers have been nice. He's got 45 runs already, 36 RBIs, which is kind of mediocre. He's already up to 10 steals. I think he gets a new career high in steals with those bigger bases and all that fun stuff. And I just think Xander Bogaerts really hasn't, shown us what he's capable of in that lineup. We got, Soto, who's been a little bit, we got Tatis back, better than ever. There's just a lot of great bats in that lineup, and Bogaerts has been hitting 4th and 5th, so a lot of RBI opportunity, even a decent amount of run opportunity. The guys behind him aren't putrid. I think he has the potential to go 20-20, and if he gets that batting average up to closer to 300, you got yourself a monster player. Go trade for Xander Bogaerts now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I actually think that Xander may be having a better season than what we've seen in the past in the counting stats category. Whereas Xander has always just been more of okay, I'm a batting average guy exclusively, along with, throwing in some stolen bases, throwing in some boatload of runs, and then some ribbies, last year he had 73, 79. Those are good numbers, but, maybe he's not the prolific guy where he had in 2019 and 2018 where he had 117. I thought those days were pretty much done, but he's Mr. All Reliable. I think this year being on San Diego, I think that may change. I think he might get back to that Boston form where boom, we're back at 2018, 2019, where he's going to have a boatload of ribbies and runs because that team is starting to, really catch fire with Manny Machado finally starting to bounce back, with, Juan Soto starting to do his thing, and, pretty much the whole roster really picking it up, and even Bogaerts over the last week. Like, this may be the last buy low window. The only thing you probably won't have is that 300 batting average from Bogaerts. I think that's the stat that's going to get the rule, because he's still trying to feel things out. Guys that are, usually mentally tough and are able to kind of be really focused behind the plate when you have a lot on your mind. Like, that's really where you see a lot of that getting hurt. So, like, I could see Bogaerts just taking a dip in the batting category, but getting a bump in all the counting stats. I love what Bogaerts' upside can be. There's no guarantee. He could just go back to what we know and tried and true who he is. But you know what? This team has a lot more talent on here at San Diego than they do on Boston. But let's move on. Great take, Dom. Let's talk about thank you. Let's talk about Mr. Zack Wheeler. Quite honestly, I feel like he needs to stop hanging out with Aaron Nola.
I love that. I'm so sorry, but that was great.
Thank you. Because
I got some choice words for Nola, man.
Oh yeah, I'm sure most of the fantasy baseball community and all of Philly, it's been really brutal. But he's doing this up and down thing, and I don't know where it came from, other than I'm blaming Nola, because you know what? He had in the beginning of June, he strung together 3 games in a row sub 2. And then he goes and gets lit up against the Mets, gets lit up against Washington. Has a bad game against Miami. Then plays great against San Diego, over the weekend. Like, I don't know what to say or do with this kid, other than the fact that I think I need to go and acquire him, because people definitely have fatigue, because this has been all season. And one thing I'm going to say is Zack Wheeler, we know who he is. It's not like he's on a new team. It's not like the Phillies are, taking a poop in their big boy pants. They're actually in the wild card race. They're in it. They have a spot, and they're working their way up and, going to catch fire. They're a second half team. So maybe Wheeler starts picking up on the mojo of what the Phillies do, and the second half can be electric. And I don't think you're going to have to pay a crazy amount to go get him. I mean, you're going to have to give up something, but you might be able to get away with giving up maybe the person we're going to talk about next that could possibly get the job done with him in a small piece. I think he's probably one of the most valuable names on this list in terms of sell high. So Dom, give your take on Zack Wheeler, and then, you'll probably feed right off of what I was saying.
Yeah, we're pretty much in agreement here. 5 out of Wheeler's last 7 starts have been pretty solid. Matt, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think Washington just has this guy's number because they lit him up both times that they played him recently. They lit him up on June 2nd. They lit him up again on July 1st. Once again, we're talking about Zack Wheeler here. The only thing I don't like is his ERA. His ERA is at a 4.04. The whip is good at a 1.16. He's well over a K per 9, Zack Wheeler. And like I said, we all know who this guy is. 3.47 ERA across 214 career starts. He's over a K per 9 in his career. The whip is a 1.19, which is pretty solid. He's never really been a great whip guy, but he's always been pretty serviceable at whip, or especially over the last 4 years, including this year. So I think, Zack Wheeler just figures things out. I think that ERA gets to, I think a mid to low 3s ERA is a reasonable expectation here for Wheeler. If you get him, he's a top 15 guy easily. Honestly, I like him a little bit better than Urias, but I think they're super close. I think one could finish as 14, one could finish as 15, and I'm not going to be mad at it. So go and acquire Zack Wheeler. We got a bunch of, guys that you definitely can sell high on coming up. But real quick, we just got a couple of quick ads for you guys. And thank you for hanging in there, folks. We truly do appreciate it. So let's talk about some sell high guys or trade away guys. And I think the first one here is, once again, I want to preface this before I get into it. It's not that we don't like these guys. It's just that they're doing so well. We don't think they're going to keep it up. So you want to maximize your value and go get you a Wheeler, go get you an Urias, go get you a Bogaerts, guys that are definitely going to be able to get stuff done. So with that being said, let's talk about Bryce Elder. Bryce Elder has been an absolute stud this year. And you know what? Honestly, I had him so high in my rankings at starting pitcher coming into the year. But then Atlanta's like, oh, he doesn't really have a spot. So I had to move him down. And it kind of just threw me for a loop because then when he, got the role, I was like, damn. I was like, he should have had the role over Schuster. And now who is the other guy? Schuster and
Dunn?
Dylan Dodd. And Dylan Dodd.
Yeah.
And Dylan
it was a
Dodd.
D.
I was like, it
choice word.
I was like, it should have been Bryce Elder, and I was so mad that it wasn't. But you know what? Bryce Elder, 2.97 ERA, 1.20 WHIP, 106 innings, 80 Ks. So he's not a K per 9 guy. The WHIP isn't blowing you away. But my concern really here is innings with Elder because he hasn't really thrown for a crazy amount of innings yet in his big league career. Last year he threw 54 in the bigs. And that was it. That was really all he threw. Oh, no, he threw 105 in the minors, so he was at like 159. I don't know how many innings they're going to let him throw this year. If he gets up to that 160, 170, then I let him keep pushing through. But the whole thing is, I don't know how successful he's going to be with those innings. He's always been a little bit higher on the WHIP side. He's not really that K per 9 guy. And if that ERA starts to fluctuate towards a little bit on the higher end, his FIP is actually a 4.13. Fielding independent pitching is an ERA indicator. So he's pitching well under a run, a run under his FIP. So if that even comes up to a high 3 ERA and the WHIP isn't good and the Ks aren't there, then you really got a guy you're not going to be as happy with as you were in the first half. So that's sell high. If you can get Bryce Elder as a piece of a trade for Zack Wheeler or Urias, I think you make that move and you're going to walk away a very, very happy camper. And even over his last start was really bad against Tampa, and then he had a pretty couple of good starts stretch, and then, there was a few bad ones against Washington and the Mets. The WHIP has been super high, but you know what? I don't want to keep repeating myself. Just sell high in Elder. Go get you an ace.
Yeah, absolutely. Great take, Tom. I don't think I need to cover anything since you covered the kid's whole life story. Let's move on here. Let's talk about Mr. Bryce Miller, somebody that we brought up on the show plenty of times for this specific episode. He's been up and down as of late, but he does show out, but then he does get lit the hell up. Somebody that's not really like in tuned in what's going on. They'll just judge a player based off of where they're ranked in your league. This could be the player that you could dump off your team pretty quickly and go, hey, here you go. He did have a nice start out against Detroit, but whatever, because he got lit up against Tampa, got lit up against Baltimore. Had a nice start against Chicago and Miami, and then got lit up against Texas, got lit up against the Yankees, then Oakland, and then got hit around at Atlanta. Like, he's not good in terms of he isn't somebody I can roll out on every matchup, and he's not a player that's has the name notoriety that I'm going to hold on my bench like a Luis Severino, who I'm holding right now to see what he's going to do over his next 2 starts before I drop him. He doesn't have that kind of clout where I'm willing to hold him for much longer. So he's either a trade, include him in a trade and kind of get him out there and hopefully he gets the job done, or you trade him away to somebody that's not as baseball savvy and try and get one by them and kind of, bend them over a little bit because hey, if you're not paying attention, it's not your problem. Just take advantage and move on and win that championship. So I would move Bryce Miller now before we have to really, just tell you to flat out drop him because I think he's 1 or 2 bad starts away from saying see you later, and he's more of a pitch and ditch guy.
Yeah, Matt. Once again, we're spot on. Bryce Miller's not that guy this year. The big problem with Bryce Miller, if you don't already know, he's the only thing he's really got is a fastball. His other stuff is just to really throw you off. His breaking stuff is not good. The changeup is, mediocre at best. And he throws his fastball 68% of the time. You're really not going to get away with that in the bigs. It just doesn't work that way because once guys know that they can sit on your fastball, that's it. That's when you're really going to start getting hit around. And if you look at, Bryce Miller's, besides the one in Detroit, 1, 2, 3, 4 out of his last 6 have been putrid. You could even wind up making that 5 out of his last 7 have been really bad. And even against Detroit, only 3 strikeouts, a 1.20 WHIP. He did get the win, but he's just not he's not where he was. He was rocking and rolling his first few starts. He was over that K per 9. He's under that K per 9 now. Bryce Miller is just somebody I'm really looking to move on from. If you can include him as a piece and to get, one of those bigger pitchers that we talked about at the top of the episode, I think you do that. Even Joe Ryan, if you can, I think you can swindle a Bryce Miller and a little something for a Joe Ryan at this point. And you just go get that trade done, because this guy, as Matt said, he's going to wind up being somebody that will wind up dropping in maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks from now. And then you're going to be happy that you got rid of him and you got something out of him. But let's move on to another guy that I feel like has been on this episode a decent amount, but we're trying to get you guys to capitalize the value while it's still there. It's Dane Dunning. Now, Dane Dunning, he's all right. I think I said this last time. I think Jacob deGrom left him with a little sprinkle of Jacob deGrom magic to him, because he's kind of just been doing it solid, all year. 92 innings, 59 Ks, 8 wins, 2.84 ERA with a 1.13 WHIP. Dane Dunning is actually pitching as we speak tonight. He's given up 2 runs through 4 innings, 4 strikeouts, 1.38 WHIP against Tampa Bay. Before that, he got lit up by Washington, and before that, he was pretty solid against Boston. But I think the other shoe's going to fall off. Dane Dunning just, I don't think he's having a breakout this late into his career. We kind of know who Dane Dunning is at this point, and I think he's going to, just sort of trend back to, the mean, where his, career ERA is a 4.06. He's well under that K per 9. The one thing, though, is, his control is decent. It's gotten a little better, but he's a career 1.33 WHIP guy. I think he trends a lot closer to his career norms than what he's doing so far. And I think you can get value for Dunning right now. As Matt said with Bryce Miller, if guys are just looking at stats and they don't know who these guys are, they don't know what they're actually doing and, what their career has looked like. Somebody sees that Dane Dunning with the 2.84, 1.13 WHIP, and, he's on the Rangers. The Rangers are one of the best teams in baseball. I think you could really, pull off one of those big name trades, get you the Urias, get you the Wheeler. I hate to keep saying it, but those are the guys that are going to get you, that everydayers championship. And I don't think Dane Dunning is that guy.
Yeah, no, I think this is like a, what do you call it? Like, we've waited a while for him. He is what? How old is he, Dom? If you don't know my man.
He is 28.
So he's one of those, I always say this, when they break out at 28, it is still possible. Like we could still see a late round, because pitching is more of a chess match than it is a checker match. Like hitting, honestly, hitting is still hard, but pitching is literally a chess match. So this still could be real, but right now, if I had to place a bet on who's going to do it in the second half of the season, I'm going to place my bet on a player that's done it for the last 5. Not somebody that's in the middle of a breakout that's about to show me and could possibly still flop. So it's really just stacking the deck in your favor of somebody that's going to be consistent at the end of the year in the playoffs versus rolling the dice and, possibly getting a 1, 2, 3 and CeeLo, and it's an automatic lose. You just don't want that. So I'd rather move on from Dane Dunning and pick up somebody more consistent. In keeper leagues and dynasty leagues, it may be a different story. This is more of a redraft take. In dynasty, I'll hold out, but if I could still get a little bit more consistent name, I probably would still move the kid. But let's move on here. Let's talk about Mr. Yoshida, Masataka Yoshida. He's been solid.
That was perfect.
Thank you, sir. Finally got it down right. He's been solid. And quite honestly, out of all the players that were coming over from the Japanese league, he looked like he was going to prime to be the guy that would be the most likely to translate. So it's kind of crazy that we're going to say sell high. But the thing is, though, I still don't know him well enough. You know what I'm saying? And this is what I'm looking at. He's a sexy name. He's holding some clout because of what he's done from the moment he's walked in this league. You might be able to walk away with somebody very valuable for trading him right now. And even in dynasty leagues, honestly, I'm willing to move away from him because he's what? How old now?
30.
30. Okay. People are going to forget that because he's new to the league. So you might be able to really go and get a young stud that's maybe a little underperforming that has done it for the last couple of years. Yoshida has a lot of value, and I think personally you should move on from him. Just not based off of just what he could do for you in short term, because I still don't know. He still hasn't done it for a full season, but even in long term, he's really only, his clock is already ticking. It's already done. He's already got mileage on the body, and 32, 33, he could flop and fall apart tomorrow. So I think Yoshida is just a move on and sell high.
Yeah, Matt, great take. I love the Doug sell him in Dynasty because of his age. That makes perfect sense. I'll say this as far as redraft leagues and stuff like that. The name of the game here is sell high. Don't sell medium. Don't sell no, sell high. Yoshida's been one of the hottest players in baseball of late. I think the 300 batting average and the counting stats are real. The speed, he's never really been a speed guy, but you know what? With the bigger bases here, that could stick. He does have a little bit of pop, but over the last 30 days, 15 runs, 4 homers, 14 RBIs, 3 steals, 342 batting average. I believe in Yoshida, but you just definitely want to capitalize the value now while he's hot. Let's move. You know what? We got it. If you're a member of the Diamond Club, you got this last guy. We're going to save this guy for the Diamond Club. But guys, that is all for us today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Thank you to our everydayers and new listeners for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. And once again, subscribe to us on Subtext. A lot of perks on there. We're having a lot of fun. We're enjoying getting to know all of you guys. And come on, join the party, guys. You know, it's that time of year where you want to be locked in and get that extra little advantage against your opponents to win that Everydayers Championship. And lock on for a new episode tomorrow. We provide you with the best players to stash on your watch list and IL. But until then, see you, folks.
Peace.